Today we're going to be covering the specifics about the integration between Continuous Delivery Edition and Agile Central. In general, basically, if you're not aware of it, the Continuous Delivery Edition is a tool that's basically used to manage and monitor your releases, and it intertwines or integrates with the numerous other products, one of those being Agile Central, which is, again, of course, a tool that's used by developers to manage the development efforts. What makes Continuous Delivery Edition, or CDE as we nickname it, is the ability to interface with these other tools or with Agile Central, and specifically is the plug-in. It has plugins that have been designed to do this integration, and these plugins basically perform three functions. First, they connect up the endpoint, which the endpoint is your connectivity between CDE and Agile Central. What's nice is you can actually have, if you need it, which I do in my case, multiple connections. So the endpoint is designed to not just do one, but you can actually have multiple connections to your Agile Central environment. Additionally, once those connections are hooked up and the connection with the server is there, you can import content from Agile Central into CDE. And we'll go into this in a lot more detail, of course. And then the other thing you can do is perform tasks, which in this case there's two tasks that are designed within Continuous Delivery Edition that allow you to perform and do things inside of the Agile Central environment. Now, one of the key points to make very clear and kind of explain to you is how to set up this endpoint. It's fairly simple from the beginning, where you just need to put in the URL to your Agile Central server, and then define the workspace name for the actual area where you want to work on. Like in the case of our production environment, it's CA Technologies, but in the case of some of our demo environments, we have a lot more namespaces. It's kind of a way you have your environment set up, so you may have to select what the namespace is that you want, or the workspace that you want to actually work into. But the real trick is knowing how to do this last step here, which is the API key. Now, the API key is something you get from Agile Central, and it allows you to have the interaction between the two, and it's based upon your credentials. So once you log into Agile Central, the best way I find to kind of maneuver to what you need to do is maneuver to the Agile Central Application Manager. And the best way I find to do that is actually go over to the help and type in API keys. It'll pull up that little URL, which is a different URL than you normally use. And because you're logged in, you can click on it and it will pull up a screen which has this header very much like what you see right here. And you just go over there and click on API keys, and this wizard here will walk you right through building an API key that you can use. Now, what it looks like is this down here below. This is a sample that actually comes from them. And so you'll get that key and you want to cut and paste that and save that. Because as you get ready to do your configuration, when you get inside of Continuous Delivery Edition, you're going to go in here and you're going to set up the endpoint. And what you'll do here, you'll give it a unique name that identifies it, like the Agile, like I call mine Agile Central Server Production. I have another one for demos. And then a description, which is optional. The endpoint, of course, is the Riley platform. You'll do the URL, workspace name, and then you'll paste that API key into that last line. Once you do all that, this little button in the middle down here, which says Test Connection, will come up. And you'll click on that, and it will validate that you have the connection. If that connection is not there, you'll get this red little plug. If it's a good connection, you won't get that. I did that on purpose so that you can kind of see what it looks like. So if you have a red plug, then you're going to know that your connection's not a valid connection. It's not good. So from there, we will have your connectivity set up. So now you're communicating between Continuous Delivery Edition and your Agile Central. So what can we do now? Well, one of the first things we want to do is have the ability to go out there and get content. What is content? Well, in the case of what CDE is set up for, it's basically these four items within the hierarchy of Agile Central. which is features, and a feature basically is a grouping of a new enhancement to a product. And in fact, I think the best example is like when we were doing the development work for CDE, we decided we wanted to add a feature of having the integration to Agile Central. So a feature, they would have created an item called a feature and listed in there that we're going to do the integration to CDE. Underneath a feature is user stories. And of course, the user stories are usually a grouping of things that need to be done. For example, just as I kind of laid out in what we're talking about here, they assigned one user story to doing the endpoint. Another user story was to developing the software to do the importing of content. Another user story was to developing the ability to interact with the product and do the task. And then, of course, within the user story, you break down tasks, which are units of work. And so then the developers were assigned to do various things to make each of those user stories get completed. So you basically have features. Under that, you have user stories, you have tasks. And then the other thing that you can import from Agile Central is also defects, which a defect can be standalone or it could be within a user story. And it is, of course, what it is. It's a bug or a flaw in the product that someone finds. And, of course, as the team is working on it, they'll try to correct some of those defects. So it may be part of the user story. It may just be something that's added to the release to be fixed. Now, when we go in and start building these, or when they're built, you have some required fields. First off, you have to give it a name, just exactly what you're doing, and, of course, define the type, which, of course, is to add content from the Riley platform or Agile Central. We still have both names in there occasionally. And then, of course, connect the endpoint to the Agile Central server. Then you need to go in and define your project because your release is probably tied to a specific project. And what's nice is, because like in the CA's case, we have several projects going on at all times, you can just put in the ampersand, like you see there, and it will pull up, it will go out and it goes out and does a query against Agile Central and pulls up the list of project names. Now, in our case, that list of project names is huge. And I think the one I wanted actually started with an R. So I put in ampersand R, and up pulls up the R's, and I find the one I wanted quickly and easily. Then you have to define the task or the type you want, which would be the type is, again, from the list above, a feature, a user story, a task, or a defect. To further fine-tune this, you can also have additional filter fields. So you can actually go down to the release name, the iteration name, or you may just want to pull in content based upon its status. So, and again, all of those fields can use the ampersand to query Agile Central and give you back what the potential list of items are. Now, the other thing that we can do with Agile Central is actually perform tasks. And the two tasks that we can do are, we can do a Riley update, which is pretty simple. We just change the status of a particular task or a defect, or we can check a test case for results to see if the test has been performed and if it's been completed. Now, when you're setting up these two tasks, the update Riley, the Riley update, you can use the ampersand to query the project name, pull down whether you're going to do a defect or a task, but you will need to put in the actual number. And the Riley numbers, like for these, start with a DE, and it'd be 1, 2, 3, or TA for a task, which, and the number after that. And then, of course, what do you want the new item status to be? And again, you can use the ampersand to pull up the list. If you're doing the check test case results, same thing with the project name you'll need. You'll need to put in the ID for the user story, which will be a US and the number, and the defect ID, which would be a DE and that particular number. The test case type, and again, there's a list there to pick from, and then what the build might be. At this point, I'm going to kind of go in and actually show you some of this, okay, and how it actually works. So right off the bat, I'm going to bring you in here to an endpoint inside of Agile Central and just kind of show you, because I didn't want to actually pull up the actual real ones because our API keys are in there. But again, here you would basically put in the name, who the authorized users are, select Riley platform, put the URL in, the namespace, of course, and, of course, the API. So now, before we go any farther, let's run in and log into Agile Central, and I want to kind of walk you through a few things. to kind of familiarize you with what what I'm looking at. For starters, here's where the namespace is, and in my case, this is our test system. I'm using a particular namespace called White Rhino. I think it was just something we set up one time a long time ago. And my project that I'm working on is Riley RP plugin. And I'm going to take you into the portfolio items because I'm going to kind of, to set this up because we have such a limited time, I only set it up to kind of pre-show you everything. So I wanted to build up the environment already. So I created a feature number 27 here. And feature 27 is F27, because they use the F acronym for features. And it is assigned to release number 4. And as you'll see, I've created one user story to go with it. So as I click on here and go into Agile Central, you'll see that here's the user story. And it's assigned to release 4, iteration 4, and it's in progress. And as we pull it up, you'll see that I have 3 tasks, 1 defect, and a test case that are assigned to it. So US 206 is my user story, and I have 3 tasks, and I have a task 85, a task 86, and a task 87. I want you to pay particular close attention to task 87. I have it set up right now to be in a state of defined. I put the task 86 at in progress, and I show the task 85 is completed. Along the way here also, here's the defect that I put in, which is a DE21, and here's the test case, which we have, which is a TC98 that will run against this particular user story. And I'm only giving you these kind of as reference points so that you can kind of see what happens as we go into Agile Central. I mean, as we go into Continuous Delivery Edition. Now, what I've done here, I've got a release that's been set up, and it's going to go through here, and it's going to have a phase, and we're going to go into all the detail about this, about doing a development phase, a testing phase, and a production phase. But before I even got started building all this, the first thing I did, I went in here and I connected up, and I did a importing of content. And basically, I'd said, okay, task, I want to see all the defined tasks. And I came in here and I defined this as add content. I selected my endpoint, which I had created earlier, the Agile Central Demo Server. And then I'm going to basically just take this back so you can see how it's done. You hit the key, and again, the list is too long for me here, so I'm going to do a capital R, and that brings me down to my Riley RP plugin I wanted. If I then come up here and do another ampersand, it's querying the database over there, or querying Agile Central, and I get my release 4. I do another query of it, and I can get my iteration 4. The drop down here, I can do task, user stories, defects, and features. And as you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, here's the feature I brought in, F27. Here's the user story, 206. Here's my defect. And then I showed you the 3 tasks, and I had each of those in different states, because that's the last thing you can do here is actually set up the state. So in this case, I wanted to get the ones that were defined. And so it gave me the list of defined, and then I did an update. So again, I can pull up all of the information I need right here. So you can see that this guy is in a defined state right now. So this content then comes in here and gets assigned, and we can then now know that this release is working on this content. Now, I'm going to kind of walk you through what I've built here and show you pieces of it before we kick it off. And I did a lot of tasks. One of the things that you're looking for with, the reason why you would use Continuous Delivery Edition is because you want more automation. So that being said, I'm trying to do a demonstration and show you guys different things. And if I just let this thing go with all this automation, it'd be done just like that. So I put a few manual steps in here that wouldn't necessarily be normal in life. You would probably automatically get a build sent in here, and some of these steps would actually happen in a more automated fashion. But I have them there because I wanted to have time to talk to you and show you what's going on next. So one of the first things I got here is we did a deployment of software. We want to deploy software into the development environment. Now, I'm not going to, we have a whole class on this, but quickly in general, this is a connection to our demo release automation server. And it's telling it to run a deployment and to run it into the dev environment and to run this particular application against this build. So that you kind of can see that that's what it's going to be doing. This is all connected. This is where another plug-in for release automation has been put in place, and this is the task to run deployments that are being done there. But now I've come down here and I've added a Riley update because I want to take task 87, because once that goes into development, I want to notify Riley that, or Agile Central, that it changed its status from being defined to it's actually in progress, that someone's, they're starting to work on it. So I have a task set up here to go out here and do an update to that particular task, 87, and change it to in progress. So I'll kick this off right quick, and as it starts, I'm going to put the Mac. I'll change this to done. It then turns around and begins to do the deployment, and then it goes in here and up to in progress. And if I come over here and refresh my defined, it goes blank. But if I refresh the in progress, you can see that 87 now has moved down here, and its status is now in progress. And of course, if we went back into Agile Central, it would have a state now of in progress. Now, as we continue on into the testing phase, I'm going to have it do another deployment into the testing environment. It's going to run tests, which again, this would have been also automatically, because Agile Central has integration into testing tools like SV and Dev Test that we have. But once those tests are run, I want it to go out there and I want it to check to see what the results are. And if it was accepted, so if you remember, I had it set up to go out there and look at the use case and see if that test case has been accepted. Once it's been done, if I get that, then it's going to turn around and move on to the next thing, which in this case I added this one here just to give us a little something to look at, where I've got it taking the defect and changing it to fixed. And then it's going to move on over to the production. So as I continue on to say done, here it is now. It's getting ready to configure the testing environment. It's now doing the deployment. We come to the phase where it might have run the test automatically. Again, I'm making this manual. This would have been automated in your most environments. And now it's going out to check to see if the test ran successfully and if it was successful. And so it says it is, and so now it moves to the next thing, which is updating the defect to being fixed and pushing it over here into the production environment, ready to be sent into production. At this point, I've actually set up another fake one called, just configure firewall so I could stop the process from running here. What I'm going to have, because what we're doing next is I'm going to have it, again, do another deployment, this time into production. Again, I'm going to have it update the task, but this time I want the task to go into a state of completed. And I'm also going to have it change the defect because it was fixed before, but now we can close out the issue as well. So as I go along and click on it here, I say done. It deploys automatically into production, and then it runs and updates the task, and the defect is now closed out as well. And if I come back over here, I click on the in progress, and the 87 is gone, but if I come down here to completed, and the 87 is back in here, as if it's showing me that it's been completed throughout the entire process. Now, one of the other things that is kind of nice, so you have the entire flow here, and you can see where you can set up tasks, and first off, import content, and then set up tasks to interact with Agile Central. Another thing that you can do is you can come here and pull up your reports and apply this filter. I can come up and I can say, let me see all the reports that have run against this, and it will show me that these particular defects, task, whatever that might be, you can see that they went from development environment to the QA environment and the prod environment. And of course, in the real environment, these may take days or at least hours. So again, we're running this through here at a little bit faster pace than normally, but again, we've only got 30 minutes for this particular demonstration to show you.